It's just a massive game of Tetris.
That's exactly what it looks like to me as well. Okay, so Puma Punku, it's a megalith near Tiwanaku in Bolivia. The name is Puma, which means Puma or Cougar, and Punku, meaning door or gate, and dates back to AD 536. It's located on the Altiplano area, which is where the Andes Mountains are at the widest. And the area at one time is thought to have had a civilization of around almost 500,000 people. It's not just the remains that we see there, but also other structures that suggest there was a city and also other things underground. And it was discovered in 1549 by Pedro Chiesa de Leon, pronunciation. It was a Spanish conquistador and Peruvian chronicler. It's 116 by 167 meters squared and covers an area of around 14 hectares. And in Aymarian, its name means Gate of the Puma. And the Aymarians believe Tiwanaku to be the birthplace of the earth, or at least the site where the world was created. And it's primarily constructed from andesite and red sandstone. And some of the sandstone was brought in from a quarry that's located close to Lake Titicaca, which is 10 kilometers away. And archaeologists argue exactly over how the stone was transported to the site, but it's mainly believed that it was using llama skin ropes, pulleys, and ramps and inclined planes to get these stones into position. Some leading archaeologists, there's quite a few of them I've looked into, but mainly Jean-Pierre Protzen and Stellaner have conducted experiments suggesting that the Tiwanaku builders had tools that allowed exact cutting of stone used during the construction. Just that archaeology, where I haven't discovered exactly what they were yet, or the origins of which have been lost over time. And it's thought by mainly, again, we're back to the Atlantis and alien enthusiasts that it's been built using alien technology, and or they've helped in it because of the lack of any building techniques that were used in any constructions that were of a precursor to Puma Punku being built. And the most notable proponents of those claims are your usual kind, and of other sites around the world, actually, are the usual. You've got your ancient aliens. The forefather of that kind of thought is, Eric von Daniken, Giorgio Secoulis, we all know him, and of course Zachariah Sitchin. And the people that are fighting that kind of thought process, you may have heard of these names too. You've got Jean-Pierre Protzen as the name before, Stellaner, Carlos Sanguines, Dieter Arnold, and Alexei Vranich, all of whom are archaeologists, and they've proved time and time again that it's Incan ingenuity that's responsible for the buildings. That alien enthusiasts and followers of ancient aliens have made claims of extraterrestrial involvement because of various the propagation of people like Coppins, as you said before, Steve. But lots and lots of stuff of why. Certain claims that were made about Puma Punku. I can read a couple out if you want. Claims that were made. Again, I'm not after vilifying or pointing the finger at any particular person, but ancient aliens is the big one. An ancient alien saying that Puma Punku is the only site on planet Earth that was built directly by extraterrestrials, which is a bit of an outlandish claim to make, but it's one that they did make. And one of the most intriguing things there is that the stones that were used weren't sandstone; they're granite and diorite. And the only stone that is harder than diorite is diamonds. So the only way this could have been achieved is if the tools were tipped with diamonds. And that's completely wrong, because the stones aren't granite or diorite at Puma Punku. The red sandstone and andesite.
Well, red sandstone is a pretty soft metal.
Exactly, yeah.
Stone. It's
pretty soft stone, yes.
Yeah. Some of those rocks we're looking at look like they were vacuum formed. They look like they were made from concrete if you just look at the photo.
Yes, the H
absolutely. Now, yeah, he said what he says. Another one of the claims is one of these platforms is 800 tons, and I think even Eric von Daniken alluded to the fact that there were stones there. The stone platforms, some of them were nearly 1,000 tons, and which is massively incorrect as well, because apparently the heaviest block at Puma Punku is 130 tons. And most of the stones are much smaller than that, so they're off by anything from 670 tons to nearly 870 tons. But again, that's a more kind of claims that like Eric von Daniken and people like that would make, as well as pointing out various features in the stone masonry that had gone on that is impossible to do without power tools. Especially the drill holes. Now they did have drilling techniques and stone splitting techniques in them days. I don't want to go too much into that just yet, but like you're saying, like each of these small drill holes are basically evenly spaced along routed grooves, and to me it's clear that power tools have been used on this unusual block of stone. This surface is as smooth as a tabletop, like in your kitchen. There is no wave to it. This was machined. Well, again, that's wrong, because the sandstone and andesite stones, as Jamie was like referring to earlier, the malleability, or how soft they actually are really easily worked with the most basic stone working tools. And just any idea that it needed to be a diamond tip tool is completely ridiculous, because the red sandstone's like relatively soft and really easy to work with. And even though the andesite is supposed to be pretty hard, it cools down pretty easy and can be flaked off using stones that are very soft and chipped to a very, very level surface, using and chipped away at using stones that are really relatively soft. Is it called the Mohs scale of stone density? And pronunciation could be wrong on that again, but the andesite can be chipped or formed into very flat, almost like spirit level kind of flat, with stones that are as soft as 5.5 on the Mohs scale. I'm not going to pretend to know what that means. I don't. But obviously it's a scale for measuring how hard you are. And such pounding stones, they were found all over the andesite quarries in the area. These stones to do this job, the archaeologists have found them. They're all over the place as evidence. And apparently sand as well is, and again, referring to especially what went on in construction techniques in Egypt, has extremely hard particles, and if it's placed between a flat surface and a rock, can polish even the hardest stones known to man. It can be used as a polish. We know this when it comes to emery cloths and sanding techniques that we have even in the present day. There's so many. Here we go. The extraterrestrials arrive and the spaceship stands in orbit, and only a small spaceship, blah 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 blah, going on about. We've had all that kind of thing. Is one of the amazing things here at Puma Punku is the precision of the blocks. You can see that with the blocks of granite that it's really been cut at very accurate 90-degree angles. Okay, well, there's 3 points what like go against that. I'll quickly do that before I pass it on to somebody else, because I don't want to be waffling for too long. Is the first one being, to make flat surfaces with the right angles, you don't need alien technology, obviously. You only need a square or the equivalent of a square, and it would have been built thousands of years after the Egyptians. It's been dated to like AD 536, like I said, and they had all kinds of squares and plums and spirit levels, and they were using them and even really basic stone making tools. And it's not perfect right angles. Going off the notes I've jotted down, you can see it, because I watched a video that Ancient Aliens did on Puma Punku, and when they even go around with these carpentry squares, and you can see that they're not perfect right angles, and but yeah, this is claims that they're making. They're not even square at all. And also they make claims like all the H blocks are the same dimensions, and which suggests that they're made by a giant machine. But they're not all the same dimension. They're completely different sizes, and some of them are off kilter. It's not remotely true. And I suppose the third one would be that the dimensions of the H blocks are not all the same, but they're close. They are close, but they're not all exact. And it's probably because they're all made using the same plans. Now, coming to the plans, because we alluded to the Egyptians and not keeping a record of the construction of the pyramids and so on. It claims that mainstream archaeologists say that Puma Punku was built by Amara Indians. And we'd all have to agree that in order to build something like Puma Punku, that, remember, of course, that not just the ruins, but there was a city there, you need writing, you need planning, and you also need an idea of where which piece goes and how it all fits together, which obviously makes sense. And there's one thing that mainstream archaeologists sort of agree upon, and that's that the Amarans didn't have any writing. So how is it possible that they built all that without a plan? Now, again, that's very wrong, because the builders of Puma Punku, they didn't have an alphabet as such. Excuse me, but they did have what they call common iconography, and artwork that was relevant to their culture, and many other cultures did. While they might have had calligraphic writing and phonemes that we understand in the modern era, they did have common iconography and artwork, and that was called Yaya Mama. Yeah, Yaya Mama.
Yeah, Mama.
And
Okay.
all the icons on the site are Yaya Mama, and they're not secret alien codes. But again, indications of the culture and the time that it was built in matches with the evidence that they found at the site. So they used pictures instead of an alphabet to dictate what they were doing for the building plans, a bit like blueprints, like architects would use blueprints now. To say that by not having an alphabet, you don't have any plans, is just completely ludicrous. And the last one that I'll go on, I've wrote down many of them, but the last one that I'll do, because fed up of hearing the sound of my voice, is how these massive blocks of granite were moved from their quarries and brought here to Puma Punku would have required some kind of super technology, levitation, anti-gravity, huge lifting vehicles, something that ancient aliens would have had. Really? I mean, it's like, if they did know how to levitate these stones, then they've put a lot of effort into creating places in the stones to attach ropes to, known as boss marks.
Mm-hmm.
Or witness marks. Many of the stuff, and this isn't just at Puma Punku, by the way, this goes right across the board of all the places that we're talking about. This gets ignored as well by a lot of the people who think it's due to alien interference. Is the fact that there are boss marks and witness marks suggesting ways that these things were manipulated and moved that human beings leave behind even now. CSI and forensics, you do forensics on a bullet, there'll be striations which prove exactly which barrel a particular bullet was fired from, and so on and so forth. These witness marks, signature marks, boss marks. Anyway, they would have put a lot of effort into creating places in the stones to attach ropes to, because, like I said, they've got grooves that are several centimeters in width and depth, proving that they on two adjacent faces for where they would use holding ropes to manipulate these pieces into place. They even had special places cut into the stones that the Puma Punku scholars call hoisting grips. And they're all very strange. If you could just levitate them, you don't need all of them. You can just lift it up and put it into place. You've also, they've got drag marks on the faces of the stones, proving that they were actually moved. These get ignored as well, that they're actually drag marks, that they've been pulled across the floor or pulled across another medium to be hoisted into place. These get ignored about again. So yeah,
it's not exciting, is it?
Well,
ice cream cone rocks that you can use to levitate massive stones is far more exciting, far more interesting. And then you get to talk about these things on a channel called the History Channel, which really pisses me off. It should be called the We Made Shit Up Channel, really. But it's more interesting. It's more exciting.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it is.
I agree with
there
that.
are still 130-ton blocks there that are 12,000 feet above sea level. It does still take quite a feat to get those kind of stones up that.
We just have to understand the motivation to do it, though. I think that's my point with the pyramids as well.
Yeah. If
we understand the motivation, all of a sudden it makes more sense. That weird problem is we're looking at it backwards. We're not thinking about. We look back and go, "Why on earth did they do that?" When we should be thinking more about, well, if we were in their position, would we do it, sort of thing. And if we understand the motivation, we understand what the situation was, then we might understand a lot more why they did it. If we understand the resources they had available to them and what have you, then the thing. Yeah. And then the why a lot of these places were, I think. But the one thing I do think about, that if you talk about the alien connection and potentially that the Incas in particular were maybe very interested in the skies above, was when you started looking at sort of like the Inca lines and they're not called that, are they? What are they called?
The Nazca lines.
The Nazca lines and things like this. These are obviously structures that were designed to be seen from the sky. That would suggest a motivation. That would suggest that these people were interested in somebody above looking down and maybe seeing it. So maybe not built by aliens, but is there the possibility that there was influence? that maybe they were motivated by some sort of presence. I can't see aliens coming down here and going, let's build a massive rock city. I don't see why they would do that.
I can't see that.
Doesn't make sense. But the humans, we might be visited by somebody, and humans might go, obviously they're gods or they're something. We must do something we want to bring them back. We want, how do we please these beings?
I mean, if you using the Nazca lines as an example, I mean, the first sort of thought about that is you can see them from. You need to be up in the sky to see them. Like, but
most
only
of them you need to be in a plane.
But a good few of them, you only need to be like 100 foot up off the floor to see them.
Yeah, you can see them from hills and things. Yeah, you can see high elevation.
That's another thing that's like that is almost like propaganda. Is the fact that it's like you can see the Great Wall of China from space, kind of thing. It's like the altitude doesn't have to be massively astronomical, and is there not some sort of evidence to suggest that they had ways of creating balloons? They understood like a basic balloon technology.
Okay, that's new to me. But still, we're talking about it being propaganda. It's not propaganda, is it? Because it is true that many of the Inca and these Aztec lines, they couldn't be seen. They were actually left undiscovered for decades.
No,
it's like about 9 different walls.
Yeah,
that made Damien laugh so hard his camera stopped working.
No,